Okay, so you're going to design an ebook cover for a book that either is already made, already has an author, and you're just redesigning it, or a book that maybe you want to write on your own or just make up. So this tutorial video is not really about how to design that. It's more like the design considerations that you need to keep in mind. So one of the biggest self-publishing houses is obviously Kindle through Amazon. So that is what we are going to pretend that we're creating a cover for. So we're using the standard size for an Amazon Kindle ebook cover. But the thing I want to show you is that most Kindles are going to be this grayscale black and white. So it's really important to keep that in mind and not have too much of a light background because it'll fade into the white. If you do have a lighter background like the top part of this one right here, you're going to need to add a 3 or 4 pixel medium gray border to the edges of your book cover so that it has a little bit of definition between the book and the background. Another thing to keep in mind is usually it has these little corner things that says read or borrowed or sample, etc. So it covers up some things that you might have in your book. So it's not a big deal. Obviously, we all probably know that this is Harry Potter, but if this wasn't so well known, that might be a problem. Another thing is when it's not a well-known author, the idea is to keep the well-known or the most important selling point is the biggest. So you can see 3 different Stephen Kings. These are 2 of his earlier books, I believe. And notice that the book titles are a little bit bigger than his name. Even if this is a redesign, people really know the name, the stand from him now. So it's pretty big. Whereas some of his newer stuff kind of puts his name bigger because he's now the selling point, not necessarily the book. So J.K. Rowling, one of the world's most famous authors, her name is still small because the name that sells it is actually Harry Potter. So you're going to have that hierarchy talk with yourself. If this is a book that's really well known like Game of Thrones, then the Game of Thrones should be big. Whereas if you're designing for Stephen King or Colleen Hoover, those authors have bigger names because their name is the draw. If this is a book that you are pretending to create for yourself or intentionally will create for yourself, you are probably not known, so your name will need to be smaller. Same if I was designing for myself. Another thing to keep in mind with this, you can see again, here's that light background. All of these are seen very small, so you don't need to, make it the most complicated image. And because they are grayscale, they have to be really easy to read. So I'm going to teach you a trick that I use when making covers to see if it's going to look good in grayscale. Because obviously we all want to design in color, and there are some e-readers that have color, but the majority of them are actually in this grayscale. So we need to make sure that it's working for that as well. So based on the requirements listed in the course, we have created now a web document. So we're going to go to document, we're going to choose web, and then we change the width and height that's indicated in the requirements. And this doesn't need to bleed because it's not being printed. So we do have some margins just so we can keep some of that space around the edge and not clutter that. But again, look at those requirements. But if you're on web, this is going to create the correct color profile in RGB. So I'll go ahead and hit close. And you'll see with this document that I've already created a black rectangle the size of the document. So that is the trick to testing grayscale, and I'll show you that in a second. But just go ahead and keep that black square off to the side, or black rectangle. So now when you're choosing your photo, you can choose it from copyright-free sites like unsplash.com. You can go to Shutterstock and purchase it, which is what I did. You have to be very careful that you are picking a photo that actually fits in this portrait orientation. So I'll show you what I mean by this. So I just created a frame, but instead I'm going to show you what my photo looks like and go to File, Place, and then pop my photo in there from the desktop just to show you what this photo looks like. So it's a really cool photo of this girl who's been enslaved by a Viking clan, etc. And it's really cool, except for she can't really fit, I can't fit her sword in and her and the arm and have it fill up in the entire cover. Now there are ways to get around this, but if it's not working, change your photo, okay? Don't try to force it and then, spend a ton of time on it. Get a photo or pick a photo that you know is going to fit well within this. But to fix this, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pop it. Oops, that's not going to do that. I don't want to do that. Okay, I'm going to select the frame first and then do File Place. Then choose that same photo, and it's going to pop it inside of it, and now I'm going to do the fit options. So this is where I can come in and now double click inside of it and slide it over, and maybe I want her partially in there, and then also, you know, her hand is a big deal because, you know, she's going to have magic, all that stuff. Which brings up a great point. I won't know what book you're designing for, even if it is a Stephen King book. I don't read Stephen King books. So you're going to have to give me a synopsis and tell me what this book is about. And then you're going to have to tell me why this image or the way you've designed it makes sense for that book. So there we go. All right, so I want to be able to use this photo. This looks pretty good. It's not great, but it's still pretty good. But I want to put like the title here, but then where would I put my name? Would I put it up here? I don't know. That's kind of weird. So I could do a couple of things. I can keep playing. Maybe I want to double click and expand this. Don't forget to hold the shift key so that we can keep it in proportion. That doesn't make sense to just have her on there all bloody and bandaged and then like the cool part out here. So what if instead I do like a half and half like that, or maybe I just focus on the hand. And maybe the next book is going to have her face over there, and it could be like a series where the entire, all three, like here's book 1, here's book 2, and maybe here's book 3. And so then side by side, they all make one picture. That could be really cool. So let's pretend right now this is what I want to do. And you have to really make sure that you are designing for a book that's going to look like this. You might be at your computer and it's really big right now, and you can do a cool font and make it small, but if I can't read it from here, then we've got a problem. So I'm going to pop in some text. Now I've pre-selected the text that I want the actual font for because I don't want to take a ton of your time. So I'm going to go ahead and make this 300, and I used Adobe Typekit to find a cool font. I'm going to look for the word rough, and it's this Almach Rough. And I like this because it kind of had that cool ice crackle look in it. So let's go ahead and do 450 and see if that fits. I'm going to center that, and again, contrast, it's going to be a better idea that this is white. Okay, so I'm going to check now and see if, again, at a small size, I can read that really well. And I can. So I might make that bigger. I might, move it around, do different things with it. But again, in the interest of time, we're going to just leave it like that. Now, because my name is not well known, I'm going to change the font to make so that Chaos is a special font. So I'm just going to use my, well, now it's just looking for rough or Almach. Okay. So I'm going to do a sans serif because I like clean. And maybe I'm going to do Acme Gothic. And maybe it doesn't need to be that big, so let's do 150. So that's a terrible font, but just go with it for right now. Oh my God, it's so terrible. I can't handle that. That's a terrible font. I don't know, ADSO is not going to make sense. ADSO is really not going to make sense. Okay, sorry. Anyway, and I might do some, let's do some tracking in there to get a little bit of space. And maybe make it 100. Because again, I'm not the draw. So I'm going to zoom out and see how it's hard to read my name at that size. So I might want to make that maybe a little bit bigger, because I still want people to know my name or get to know my name. So this doesn't mean that I wouldn't change the font colors or things like that, but I'm not going to change it to this orangey color, because what's going to happen is it's going to get lost in grayscale. So here comes this trick with this black square. What you're going to do is you're going to put it on top of everything. And if it's not on top because you created it first, you can hold Shift, Command, and right bracket to bring it forward. Now yours is just going to look like a black square, but I brought it forward and I had already changed the opacity, because what you want to do is click on opacity and change it to the saturation blend mode. If it's normal, it just looks like a black square. But if you change this to saturation, now you can see if on grayscale, if we can see that. So if I hit W key and I minimize, I can still read Chaos and Jessica Eddington, and I can still see the graphic. So this would be a good candidate to put into a cover. Now, obviously, I only did that in like 5-10 minutes, but for you, if you do extra stuff, you can. But again, remember that they're seeing it at a small size, so it's better to kind of keep it simple. All right, I think that's all my advice for this. Good luck.